Thank you all very much for inviting me. Thank you for bringing me here, Rick and Yvonne. Thank you all so much for your hospitality and your kindness up until this point. I've had a great time. I don't know what local means. Local seems to be a very broad term if it includes someone from Baltimore, Maryland. But I am glad to be here and glad to be local, nonetheless. I am here as an affiliate pastor representing the Acton Institute. How many of y'all are familiar with the Acton Institute? Okay, a couple of you guys are familiar there. Let me give you just a little bit of a explanation of what Acton is. The Acton Institute is located in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So, by the way, as I said, local is a very broad term for me. So broad that it includes now Miami and also Grand Rapids, Michigan as well. So basically, if it's in the continental 48, it's local for me. But anyways, located in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the motto, if you will, of Acton is to connect good intentions with sound economics. To connect good intentions with sound economics. What they mean by that is this. Let's say you have someone in your congregations or you have someone in your communities that is in need. Let's say that they need to pay a cable bill or pay a water bill or something along those lines. And they come to you with that need, tears and everything, and you're looking and you're at that person, you're listening to the need, and immediately you have a good intention, hopefully. Hopefully, that good intention is, I've got to help this person out, right? Yes? No? I'm sorry. Baltimore, remember, y'all talk back in Baltimore, right? Okay, so what Acton wants to do is come in and say, okay, not every way of helping helps, okay? You can say that you're helping, but just because you're saying it and just because you have good intentions doesn't mean that what you're actually doing in the long run helps. In fact, there have been some books in recent years that have kind of entered into that arena and are trying to sound the alarm as well. One book is called Toxic Charity. It's one that I highly recommend to you. Both of them I highly recommend. The other one is called When Helping Hurts. When Helping Hurts. And so Acton is coming in and saying, we want to help out with this. We want you to take these good intentions that you have, but we also want you to connect them with sound principles so that when you help, you actually help and you don't contribute to the hurt. Okay? Now, I'm here as an affiliate pastor. What is an affiliate pastor? Well, an affiliate pastor is a person who works for Acton, who loves the ideas. Acton, at its best, really is a think tank. So it's a group of folks with a whole lot of degrees and a whole lot of ideas, these sound principles that we're talking about, and they're showing the rationale behind them all. They're showing why these principles matter, why these principles work. Well, what they recognized along the way is that a lot of the folks that are involved in their circles aren't here. They're not on the ground level. They're up here somewhere. And they've got the ideas, they've got the principles, they've taught in schools and all of that. But eventually there were some folks who said, okay, but how does this work? What does this look like here on the ground level? And so they asked myself and a few other guys as pastors if we could help to communicate that, if we could help to show why these things work and how these things work on the ground level. And so I'm glad to be a part of what Acton is doing. I want to tell you a little bit about my context. I pastor a church over in Baltimore. I know that may have been confusing when some of y'all saw the name tag and it says First Baptist Church of Brooklyn, and y'all automatically thought New York. I'm just going to give y'all a little bit of a side note. I've been fighting that for 6 years. I'm trying to get them to change the name and stop confusing every single person that they come in contact with, but they're not listening to me. So anyways, but First Baptist Church of Brooklyn. Brooklyn is the neighborhood that we're located in Baltimore. Brooklyn is not exactly the face of Baltimore. All right, I don't know too much about the Miami area, but I would just assume that there are certain parts of Miami that make the postcards, and then there's Miami. Is that true? Okay. Baltimore is very much like that. A lot of folks say that Baltimore is a city of neighborhoods. I've been there long enough to know that Baltimore is a city of blocks. It's a city of blocks. So you've got one block that looks great. It's a place where you would go to eat. It's a place where you go and take selfies. It's a place where you go and have a great time. And then you go another block or two more blocks and you get to the real part of the city. There's the part that makes the postcards and the part that make the news, right? And Baltimore's like that. I live, fortunately, in an area that makes more of the news than it does the postcards. I live in Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, you have a lot of confusion. Brooklyn used to be a place where folks would settle down, raise their families. In fact, in our church, we have many of them. We have folks who served in combat, who came to the Baltimore area because that's where the factories were back in the 50s and 60s and so forth. And they've raised their kids there, their grandkids are there, and everything. It's wonderful. At the same time, later on in Baltimore, the factories shut down. And when the factories shut down, poverty skyrocketed. The drug culture skyrocketed in Baltimore. Those of y'all who are familiar with shows like Homicide, Life in the Streets, or The Wire, or things like that, you know some of the narrative there in Baltimore. Brooklyn was pretty much cocooned from all of that until about the 1990s. During the 1990s, in the Inner Harbor area, the city decided that they wanted to invest more money and make that the face of Baltimore. And so when they did so, they had to figure out what to do with all these poor folk. And enter gentrification. So what did they do? They displaced them, raised the prices and so on of their homes and of their property, raised the taxes, drove them out of the area. Where did they go? They went to areas like Brooklyn. Now all of a sudden, this quiet town where folks went to raise their kids and their grandkids, now it's a place where, now my home, the place that I call home, is riddled with drugs, riddled with prostitution, riddled with poverty. It's not the place to raise your family. So then you ask, why are you raising your family there? Well, I'm raising my family there because, for one thing, this is the Jesus answer here, God brought me there. God told me to go, so I went, and we've been there ever since, and we'll be there until God says go somewhere else, okay? That's the Jesus answer. The other answer is because there are folks there who have never experienced the things that I've experienced growing up. I grew up with a mom and a dad who were born and raised in Washington, D.C., their folks didn't graduate from college. My folks didn't graduate from college. But they had enough people, as we talked about with relationships, they had enough people to come around them, to speak into their lives, to bless them, if you will, and to say, you can do this. You can make something out of your lives. That out of my own family, my parents, who didn't make a whole lot of money living while I was growing up, my parents were able to have 3 children, 2 of whom have graduated from college. I have a master's degree. I'm working right now on a PhD. My sister went to med school, and she's working as a physician's assistant right now, and all of that. And you're going, how in the world did this come from a family where I was born out of wedlock and all of that? My mom should have been a single mom, but my dad decided to stay. And he has been there ever since. And now all of a sudden we have all of this success and so on from myself and from my siblings. What happened? Well, they were able to have a context around them of people who said, you can do this. They had the relationships. The folks in my neighborhood, by and large, don't have those relationships. And so we as a church have said, we're going to be that in this community. We don't have a whole lot of money. We don't have, a lot of resources to start initiatives and things like that. But what we do have is people. And we have people who are able to connect with other people to help them up and help them out so that they can have a better life for themselves and for their families. I'll give you a couple examples. There's a gentleman in my church. He's had a whole lot of issues going on. He's a recovering addict. He's had job issues, in and out of jobs and so on. He's on disability as well. We had a little bit of a struggle with him because he was going around pretty much every Sunday, coming to church specifically for one purpose and one purpose only, and that was to ask for money. And so we would go up to him and we would say, dude, you can't do that every Sunday. We're coming together. We would love to help you. We would love to give you what you need, but you can't be peddling every week. You got to calm that down. And so I got to talking to him, and I said, you know what? Let's do something about this. So I said, why don't we get a job? Why don't I help you out? If there's some job fairs going around, everything, I will personally drive you, and we'll take care of all of this. And he said something. It threw me off. Mind you, I did not grow up in Baltimore and all of that. This is new territory for me. He said, Pastor, I would love to do that and everything, but I can't get it. I can't get a job. What do you mean you can't get a job? Anybody can get a job. And I'm thinking, is this like a lack of confidence or something like that? No, man, you can do this. It's going to be okay. It's all right. No. You don't understand, Pastor. I'm on disability. Oh, yeah. Okay. So you don't have to do like manual labor or something. Just find something that doesn't. No, Pastor, you don't understand. You see, what happens is if I go on to disability and if I'm on disability and I get a job and I make too much money, they'll kick me off of disability. Okay, but if you have too much money, then you can afford your own insurance. Yeah, but if I lose my job and my insurance. I see what's going on. There's more stability for you to do nothing than there is for you to do something. That changed a lot of my thinking, and that changed a lot of my perspective and my approach with situations like that. We got to talking, and we got to tell, I got to tell him a little bit about who he was as a person, and I got to tell him about how, he was created to work, and he was created to take responsibilities, and this isn't something that was given out of some type of American narrative or something like that, but this is embedded in the pages of Scripture. This comes from Genesis 1. In Genesis 2, God put the man in the garden to work it and to keep it, and so this is a part of who you are as a human being. You were made to work, and you don't need to trust in the government to do all of these different things for you. God has given you the skills and the abilities where you can be able to do this for yourself. And as we got to talking, we did wind up getting a job for him. He started working out at Boston Market. He was one of the carvers, and he used to talk about how he was one of the best carvers. I don't know if that's true or not, but I went with it. Yeah, you are, man. You're one of the best carvers there in the history of Boston Market. I don't know if he is or not, but good job, man. And guess what? On Sunday morning, when he got that, when we announced that to the church, because we do that. When somebody gets a job that's been looking for a job, we pray over that person. We pray that God will provide for them. When they get it, we make sure that they hear about it. And when we did, the church celebrated. Let me tell you what happened to him on that moment when he heard a group of people celebrating and saying, "You've got this." Or even more importantly, God's got this. He's got you. He's taking care of you. And we cheer for what he's done. He's still doing what he's doing. God has blessed him in a great way, and we're very grateful for that. Now, I got to be honest. It's not going to be all success stories. It hasn't been all success stories. We've seen folks, one teen girl in our church who has struggled. She listened to her family instead of listening to her church, when her family was telling her that if she wanted to make a living for herself, she needed to go get pregnant, and the government would give her money to take care of the baby and all of that. That was the advice that she got from her family. Unfortunately, she listened to her family and not to the church. And so there's some moments where we're cheering. There are moments where we're weeping. And we're crying that, she has a beautiful baby girl, and we can praise God for the baby girl, but we wish that she would have come in a different way. And so, there are all kinds of different things that happen. We wish that I could say that we're changing all of Brooklyn. We're really not, at least not immediately. We're just going one person at a time. And my prayer is for each one of you, as you are taking these ideas and taking these concepts and investing in the lives of your neighbors, that one person at a time, God will show that fruit in your lives as well. But we do this because we believe that people matter. And we believe that every single life is created in the image of God, and therefore every single life deserves the time and the care necessary so that help actually helps. And I pray that the same thing will be for you as well.
So here's what we want to do. Just we've got some time allocated before our next national speaker comes up to just open it up to a little bit of question and answer. So you've heard from Ronjour a little bit about what's going on in his space and what it looks like. What we want to do now is open the floor to you. If you have any questions, just hey, what have you seen? What have you learned? What have you heard? Ronjour, when the questions come, could you speak into the mic? We are recording the session. And then go and engage. We've got about 10 to 15 minutes set aside for this time. So if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask our brother.
Sure. Yeah.
What are some of the things that you're doing to help create that culture that you're describing? What is like just small groups? Is there certain things you're doing for outreach in the community? Like how are you engaging people directly?
Yeah, a lot of it, by the way, for those who didn't hear, the question is, what are we doing to help cultivate that culture in our church? One of the things, let me just give a little bullet points. For one, I'm a pastor. And so I'm very, very hawkish when it comes to my pulpit. And I say my pulpit. It's not my pulpit. It's the Lord's pulpit. And his word should be preached from that. But we as a church, we believe in the Great Commission. And somewhere down the line, the Great Commission got reduced to evangelism. It's not less than evangelism. Go make disciples of all nations. It's not less than evangelism, but it's more than evangelism. Why do I say that? Well, Jesus says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Okay? All authority in heaven and on earth. So if it exists in heaven, it belongs to Jesus. If it exists on earth, it belongs to Jesus. The water bottles on your table, the electronic devices, you belong to Jesus. And so that is the beginning of a new framework that says Jesus doesn't just care about your soul. We were talking about this just last night over dinner, how I'm a Baptist, and so I've heard ad nauseum Baptists talk about soul winning. We're here to win souls, soul winning. Well, isn't there more to us than souls? I mean, shouldn't we care about more than just the soul? I don't want to just win the soul. I want to win the whole person. Why? Because all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to Christ. So then he goes on and he says, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe everything that I've commanded you. Well, did Jesus only talk about evangelism? No, I mean, Jesus talked about all of life. Okay, so I'm going to preach in such a way that we cover all of life, and we hopefully are starting to see how all of life fits under the authority of Jesus Christ. So that's the pulpit. From you mentioned small groups and things like that. Both in our small groups that are more gender specific in terms of our men's groups and our women's groups, we get down into kind of the nitty-gritty of life. We want to get there. We want it to be a little uncomfortable because we're getting into each other's spaces and things like that. And so we talk about those types of things. How you doing? How you doing on the job? How you doing at the home? Things like that. In fact, just tomorrow, I'm hoping I could be home in time for it, but tomorrow, our men's group, we're going to be going over to one of our brother's houses. His house he's remodeling it and all of that, and for whatever reason, he was trying to do that all by himself. And so once we got word for it, we said, you know what, this is a men's ministry thing, so hey, all the fellas, let's all get together this Saturday. We're going to go over and we're going to help the brother out. And so that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow. Things like that, where we're going, hey, it's more than just us coming together, singing a couple songs, throwing a few bucks in the offering plate, telling people about Jesus, and that's the Christian life. It's so much more to the Christian life than that, and we want to make sure that is the is up there front and center with the culture of the church and the life of the church. There's so many more ways that we do it, but that's just a little snapshot. Yeah.
I have some experience in the benevolence ministry
Mm-hmm.
and the work I've done. And I think there was a situation that happened recently that it had nothing to do with our church per se, but somebody that I encountered who was on the work site shared something about how their home had just burned down a couple of weeks ago.
Mm.
A believer, young guy, young family.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just put the word out, and we've been able to get some things for that family. But the interesting piece was for him to say that although he was a faithful member of a church, everybody there told him to pray for him.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really,
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
So where's that balance? Because I've seen the challenge of when you're so formal in your processes that you really can you just help the person out?
Mm-hmm.
Turn this into a big legalistic, piece to the other side of the pendulum when there's just literally no process at all for somebody when they are in the body of Christ.
Yeah. It's tough. Benevolence is a tough issue with our church because we are a very low income neighborhood. So we encourage folks coming together, and we do have a benevolence fund in our church, and we do encourage folks to give regularly, to give in terms of your offerings, your weekly offerings and everything. But if you do have more that you're able to give, to put that into benevolence and so on, so we're able to help with that. And so there are things that we will do from a church side that we'll be able to draw from the benevolence. Sometimes we have it, sometimes we don't. But then there are other situations where I will just flat out say, hey, I'll say it Sunday morning, hey, there's a need. And if there's anybody that's able to meet that need, talk with me after the service, and things like that. For instance, there was a gentleman who had recently passed away. He had cancer. He and his wife were basically just drowning in all of the bills from the cancer treatments and things like that. And I knew that anything that we would offer from our benevolence really would just be a drop in the bucket in there. And so I just said it there from the church, from the pulpit. I said, hey, this is a need, and we don't want we don't want them suffering, on their own like this. We're going to come alongside of them, and we're going to help as best as we can. And we actually raised more money that way than if we had just cut a check from the benevolence fund. And so God was very gracious with that. In fact, he and his wife were in tears. They were trying to pay us back and all of that. We're like, no, a gift is a gift. You don't, we're not lending this to you or anything like that. We want you to be blessed, and we want you to have one less thing off your back. And so yeah, it varies, from season to season, how much we have and things like that. But we also do try to, we try to be careful with it. And so there may be a need that may just exceed what we're able to give in terms of, if we were to give to this need, then we wouldn't have enough to give to any other needs and things like that. And so there's some wisdom in there as well, where we just try to be wise with the resources that God gives us so that we can give in a way that will help the most people and meet the most needs. Yeah. Oh, thought you were waving at me. Anyone else? Yeah.
So almost all churches have needs, so I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
your church has a need.
Mm-hmm.
So first thing, if you could identify what your greatest need is, and then which need do you have for your church will impact your congregation and your community the most if you solved it. So what would that need be, and which one it might be a different one.
Yeah.
Would be the greatest thing for your community and your congregation.
Sure. I mean, it's easy to say money. I mean, that I think is probably every church's need. If we just had a little bit more, we'd be able to do more and help more and all of that. If I could be candid, I think one of our biggest needs in our church is like-mindedness. You have some folks in the church that I think are still thinking that, if we if I can use language like this, if we just toss some aid, almost like a drive-by aid, approach, where it's like, all they need is some food, so give them some food. All they need is some money, so give them some money. All they need is some clothes, so give them some clothes. And yeah, there's truth to that. But my approach has always been, but what happens after that meal? Well, you're hungry again. Well, where's that food going to come from? Well, that's usually when folks come back and they need more food. Okay, well, how about if I meet the actual need? If I get down to the root of the problem, figure out why, those structures aren't there, why those, resources aren't there for this particular person to be able to feed himself or feed herself. That's not being insensitive. That's being loving, and all that. But we have some folks in the church that are still kind of working with that, and still trying to process all of that. That sometimes we have to say no in order to meet a deeper need. That if we meet that deeper need, then we'll be able to accomplish, the surface need in the process. So that takes some time. That takes some relearning and reteaching, things like that. But yeah, the other thing too, from our standpoint, just because of how overwhelming needs are in our community, we need rest. I know for myself personally, and I know that I'm not the only person in the church that wrestles with that. It's so easy for us to just go in adrenaline mode, and exactly right. We burn ourselves out. We're going. There's so many needs to be met that it's almost like we go, okay, I've got 2 hours, and I'm going to meet as many needs as I can possibly do, and I burn myself to the ground in the process. And that, just takes wisdom to say, okay, I can meet these needs, and then I got to pull back. Look at Jesus. I mean, all of the needs that were around Jesus, and then look at how many times in the gospel it says, and then he would leave all of that, retreat from all of that, and go to the mountain and pray. Mm-hmm. There were still blind people there. There were still sick folks there. There were still poor folks there, and all of that. And Jesus left it to go and retreat and recharge and all of that. That's some wisdom that I need, and I know that I probably should be a better leader with our church to have those those seasons of downtime and everything too. So, yeah, those are some things that, at least right now, pop in my head. Yeah.
Last one.
Yeah.
Is there any formalized approach through your church that you connect the Sunday to the Monday? Just curious how you apply that into your own church.
Yeah, most of what we do is non-programmatic. Most of the stuff that we do is we try to just do it from a relational standpoint and let it draw a little bit more organically out of that. But then there are some partnerships that we have as well. I mean, again, I just assume that Baltimore is similar to Miami in that one church just can't do it. That if you're going to do this, you're going to have to do this together. And so that's one of the things that we've done as a church. We've just partnered with folks. There's some good nonprofits up in Baltimore that have helped out with that. We've got some folks, a Christian organization that helps with getting folks back on their feet and things like that. We partner with them as much as we can. There's some folks that provide counsel and so on that we partner with them as well. And so we're blessed to be in an area where there are a lot of groups groups and organizations that we can partner with in order to connect the dots a little bit more faithfully there. But on the practical day-to-day level, we try to do as much through our avenues of relationships as we can. So real quick illustration, there's a guy who is working right now at an elementary school in their cafeteria. He got that job from a relationship in our church. And there's a guy who's a handyman, and he gets hours doing handyman work and things like that. That came from a relationship in our church. And so it's those types of things where we encourage discipleship. And discipleship, again, like y'all have heard all day so far, discipleship covering all of life. And so if there's somebody who needs a job, hey, I know this person over here, why don't you spend some time with him? Kind of that apprenticeship thing that Tom Nelson was talking about. We try to do that. It's not perfect. We do have folks that fall through the cracks, but we're trying as best we can with what we got to